Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something we can learn simply by looking outside our windows. That is resilience. We often think resilience means being strong all the time. We imagine that a resilient person never feels tired, never gets disappointed, never cries and never struggles. But you know what? Nature teaches us something very different. Nature doesn't survive because everything is easy. It survives because it adapts, bends, stresses, changes and begins. Okay. So think about a tree during a storm. The wind may shake its branches, some leaves may fall, a few branches may even break, but the tree doesn't decide that the storm has destroyed its entire purpose. It remains rooted. And eventually the storm passes. And that is our first lesson from nature. You can be shaken without being defeated. Okay, so lesson number 1 is bend, don't always break. Look at a tree in strong wind. A rigid branch can snap, but a flexible branch can move with the wind. And there's a beautiful lesson here. Sometimes we think being strong means refusing to change. We say this is how I planned my life. We say this is how things were supposed to happen. I don't want to change direction. But life doesn't always follow our plans. Relationships change. Careers change. Opportunities disappear. People leave. Plans fail. And sometimes we have to change with circumstances. And that doesn't mean we are weak, because flexibility can be a form of strength. So just like a tree bends during a storm, we can adjust without losing who we are. Okay, so lesson number 2 is growth takes time. Nature never seems to be in a hurry. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. A flower doesn't bloom because we demanded it to bloom faster. A forest doesn't appear in a single afternoon. Growth happens quietly, day after day, season after season. And that is something we desperately need to remember in our own lives. Because we live in a world of instant results. We see someone's success online and wonder why our own journey is taking so long. But we don't see the roots. We see the flower. We don't see the months or years of growth underneath the soil. And the same is true for our lives. Your skills are developing. Your confidence is developing. Your creativity is developing. Your career is developing. Your understanding of yourself is developing. Just because you cannot see dramatic results today doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some of the most important growth happens where nobody can see it. Okay, so lesson number 3 is winter is not the end. One of my favorite lessons from nature comes from the changing seasons. Trees lose their leaves, fields become quiet, flowers disappear. The landscape can look almost empty, but winter doesn't mean nature has stopped living. It is simply entering another phase, and eventually spring arrives. And this reminds us that we also have seasons. There may be periods when we feel incredibly productive and creative, and there may be periods when we need to slow down, and there may be moments when everything seems to be moving forward. And there may be moments when we feel stuck. But you know what? Being in a quiet season doesn't mean your story is over. Rest is not failure. Sometimes you are not falling behind. Sometimes you are preparing for your next season. Okay, so lesson number 4 is water finds another way. Think about water. When it encounters a rock, it doesn't always try to destroy the rock. It moves around it. it finds another path, it continues flowing. So, what a powerful metaphor for life is that sometimes we spend enormous amounts of energy trying to force something that simply isn't working. We keep pushing the same door, we keep pursuing the same opportunity, we keep expecting the same person to change, we keep following a plan that no longer fits our circumstances. Maybe the answer isn't always to push harder. Maybe the answer is to find another route. So, changing direction doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it means you are wise enough to recognize that there is another way forward. So, here's the lesson number 5. Small things can become powerful. Okay, so look at a tiny seed. It appears insignificant. You can hold it between your fingers, but under the right conditions, that tiny seed can become a plant, a tree, or an entire ecosystem. And this reminds me never to underestimate small beginnings. One page can become a book. One idea can become a project. One conversation can change a relationship, and one decision can change the direction of your life. One small habit repeated every day can eventually create enormous change. And we often want to know the final result before we begin. But nature doesn't work that way. A seed begins without knowing exactly what it will become. It simply begins growing. Maybe we don't need to have the entire plan. Maybe we just need to take the next step. Okay, so lesson number 6 is there is strength in roots. When we look at a tree, we notice its branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits. But the most important part may be the part we cannot see, the roots. Roots provide stability because they hold the tree in place. And I think human beings need roots too. Our roots can be our values, our education, our experiences, our principles, our creativity. The people who genuinely supports us. So the lessons we have learned from difficult moments when life becomes uncertain are roots. Our roots reminds us who we are, and sometimes resilience isn't about moving forward quickly. Sometimes it's about staying grounded while everything around you changes. Okay, so now lesson number 7 is nature doesn't compare. A rose doesn't look at a sunflower and say, why am I not growing like that? A tree doesn't compare itself with a flower. A river doesn't compare its journey with a mountain. Everything in nature has its own rhythm. And yet, as humans, comparison can become one of our biggest sources of unhappiness. We look at someone else's timeline and question our own. But perhaps we need to remember that our journey is not supposed to look identical to anyone else's. Someone may achieve something at 25. Someone else may discover it at 35. And another person may find their path at 50. There is no universal timetable for becoming who you are meant to become. Okay, so your season is your season. Now let's come to the lesson number 8. That is, nature gives us another powerful lesson after every storm. Eventually the clouds move. The rain stops. The sunlight returns. Birds begin singing again, and the earth absorbs the water. And life continues. This doesn't mean storms don't cause damage. They do. Real life can hurt. Failure can hurt. Loss can hurt. Disappointment can change us. But resilience doesn't mean pretending that pain didn't happen. It means allowing yourself to heal and eventually asking, what can I build from here? You don't have to return to exactly who you were before the storm. Maybe you can become wiser, more compassionate, more aware, more selective about where you invest your energy. Sometimes resilience doesn't mean returning to your old self. Sometimes it means growing into a new version of yourself. Okay, so what nature's taught me? Nature taught me, it's like when I look back to my own creative journey, there are like many of these lessons, like writing hundreds of stories that didn't happen in one day. Creative projects didn't appear fully formed. Awards and recognitions didn't happen without the work that came before them. Every finished project began with an unfinished idea, and every achievement included moments of uncertainty. And just like nature, progress happened gradually. And there were moments of growth, there were moments of waiting, there were moments of change, and there were moments when I simply had to keep going. And that is why I don't think resilience means constantly pushing yourself. Sometimes resilience means creating. Sometimes it means learning. Sometimes it means resting. Sometimes it means starting over. And sometimes it means simply saying, I'm not finished yet. So here's a small exercise for you. After this video, I want you to spend 5 minutes thinking about your own resilience. Ask yourself 3 questions. What storm have I already survived? Think about something that once felt impossible but eventually passed. And second is, what has that experience taught me? Maybe it taught you patience, maybe boundaries, maybe courage, maybe self-respect. And third, what small thing am I growing right now? So it could be your career, like your creativity, your confidence, your relationships, your health, your knowledge. Okay, so now whatever it is, don't dismiss it because it hasn't become something big yet. Remember the seed, it is already growing. Nature doesn't promise that storms won't come. It teaches us something more useful. It teaches us that storms pass. It teaches us to bend when necessary, to stay rooted when possible, to change direction when needed, to rest during quiet seasons, to grow patiently, and to begin again. So the next time life feels difficult, look at a tree. Remember its roots. Remember its flexibility. Remember that it has survived countless seasons. And remind yourself, I don't have to have everything figured out today. I don't have to grow at someone else's pace. I just have to keep nurturing my roots and taking the next step. Because resilience isn't about never failing. It is about continuing to grow. Okay, so like nature, we can lose leaves and still bloom again. We can face storms and still stand. We can experience winter and still believe in spring. And perhaps the greatest lesson nature gives us is this: you are allowed to change. You are allowed to rest, and you are always capable of beginning again. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.